What would you choose when faced with the opportunity to escape a life of crime or to fight for justice, knowing the price could be your very freedom? Welcome to Happiness of Love, your daily dose of K-dramas. Get ready to fall in love with unforgettable stories. Can you tell us where are you listening from? The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as Mike Reynolds stepped into the stark, corporate world of TitanTech, a place buzzing with ambition and deceit. A sharp contrast to his shady past, Mike, at 35, felt a thrill run through him as he adjusted his tailored suit and flashed a confident smile that masked years of ethical ambiguity. He had spent the last decade navigating the murky waters of small-time criminals and corrupt entrepreneurs, but this was different. This was the big league, and the stakes were not just high, they were life-altering. He couldn't suppress the rush of adrenaline surging through him as the realization hit that he was here to rewrite his narrative, to siphon away cash from a tech giant steeped in corruption. As he navigated through the sprawling open-plan offices, he was ensconced in a whirlwind of frenetic energy and palpable tension. Employees keystroked at their computers, faces drawn and weary, their eyes reflecting the frustration of unyielding demands from above. Mike's sharp gaze scanned the room, taking stock of the players in this corporate chess game. Among them was Kate Dawson, an analyst whose determination shone like a beacon amidst the bleakness, her intelligent eyes scrutinizing spreadsheets and numbers with an unwavering focus. The moment their gases met, he felt a chill. She was not one to be easily fooled, and suspicion danced in the corner of her lips as she locked onto him. Yet it was Rick Carter, the CFO, who truly commanded the room with a magnetic yet intimidating presence. He strode in wearing his authority like a bespoke suit, the air around him crackling with power as he barked orders, confident in the illusion of control he projected. Mike caught the glint in Rick's eye, an unsettling reminder that he was stepping into a den of wolves. The game was on, but what Mike didn't know was that lurking silently in the shadows was Lisa Hartley, a seemingly unassuming intern who was, in fact, a federal investigator stealthily gathering intel. In that buzz of corporate desperation, Mike's heart raced, a sense of impending chaos loomed. Little did he know that beneath the surface of TitanTech, dark connections brewed, and the real game would not merely be about the numbers, it would be a battle of wits against powerful foes. He felt a surge of defiance rise within him as he realized he wasn't just a player in their game, he could be the game changer. And as he settled into his new role, the tension simmering in the air suggested that everything was far from what it seemed. Would he be able to navigate this labyrinth of deception without becoming the hunted? The thrill of the chase was intoxicating, but with each calculated step, the question burned brighter. Could he truly outsmart those who played the game so viciously? As Mike settled into his new cubicle at TitanTech, the room's fluorescent light illuminated scattered papers that seemed to brim with irregularities and scandals. He focused his attention on a trove of financial reports that, even by his astute standards, revealed an unsettling complexity. As he looked closer, the discrepancies began to unfold before his eyes in a dance of deceptive numbers. Mike reached out and picked up a file, his fingers gliding over the paper as he felt the omnipresence of the company's shadowy involvement. It was there that his manipulative nature betrayed him, and he found himself, for the first time, uneasy about the system that supported him. He whispered to himself that he couldn't let greed cloud his vision, but the image of a future filled with wealth was too seductive to ignore. As he observed the tired faces of his colleagues, he noticed how they were immersed in an almost apathetic state, as if the corruption they breathed were an invisible, suffocating pestilence. The sound of keyboards pounding frantically around him seemed to echo with quiet desperation, revealing the growing anxiety in the air. In a corner of the office, he saw Rick Carter, the ruthless chief financial officer, leading a meeting with a handful of executives. The way Rick presented the numbers was careful and calculated, but Mike could see past the facade he set up. It was as if Rick's every word was a thread in a web that bound his victims to him, capturing them in a contract of voluntary servitude. And then the whispers he had heard before began to make sense. In an act of pure foolishness, he realized that accounting would be the perfect scapegoat for Rick's deviations. A shiver ran down his spine at the thought that he, a newcomer, could be thrown under the bus for a scandal he hadn't created. A voice echoed in his mind, if you don't do something about it, you might be the first in line. The moral dilemma began to form, inserting roots into his dormant conscience. So, as he tried to come up with plans to ward off the myriad of problems that surrounded him, a decision began to form within him. What should have been a mere numbers game was turning into a war scenario with real lives at stake, and the line between right and wrong began to blur even further. He felt an unexpected impulse to protect the unsuspecting, and this new light could change everything. But before taking any action, Mike needed to understand who he was dealing with. He glanced across the office, where a woman with brown hair and piercing eyes appeared to be in her own personal hell. Kate Dawson, the financial analyst, was clearly unprepared for the avalanche of corruption unfolding before her. She quickly glanced through the documents, a frown of frustration spread across her face, and Mike couldn't help but notice how she fought against this system that was apparently in despair. He wondered if Kate could be an unexpected ally or just another obstacle in his already complicated path. Facing her, she turned suddenly and Mike caught a look of determination on her face, as unyielding as steel. So, as the wheels of that corrupt maze continued to turn, Mike knew he would need more than just cunning. He needed someone with the courage to not only look through the veil of corruption, but who was also willing to open it completely. The challenge was set, and his next move could change the fate of not only his quest for money, but also that of many innocent people whose lives were about to be devastated by Rick Carter's unbridled greed. With a mix of anxiety and excitement, Mike Reynolds began tinkering with the numbers he had always had under control, his sharp mind working a mile a minute. He decided that if he wanted to survive the mad race unfolding inside TitanTech, he had better sabotage Rick Carter's harmful schemes before they became too late. He had an impassive look on his face as he adjusted small financial transactions, discreetly stopping the flow of money that was being so carefully diverted. Adrenaline coursed through his veins as he realized that, in his position, he would have the opportunity not only to protect himself, but to create chaos in the CFO's corrupt plans. Meanwhile, false information began to make its way through Rick's team, confusing everyone and casting a shadow of doubt over the CFO's cunning. In an inconspicuous corner of the office, with the flickering fluorescent lights and the constant hum of printers, Kate Dawson watched Mike's every move. His distrust was palpable. She always had a keen eye on what was wrong within the company. As she saw Mike glide down the hallway, she couldn't help but feel the urge to approach him. Approaching slowly, she confronted him with an expression of determination, questioning how a newcomer could maneuver so smoothly through the intricate financial transactions that had been part of her life. She said something didn't add up, and that his behavior made her nervous. Mike, however, was not willing to let himself be discouraged. With a mischievous smile, he insinuated that he could be an unlikely ally in the fight against corruption, provoking a frustration in Kate that until then she didn't know she possessed. The idea of needing his help bothered her, but at the same time, there was a spark of hope illuminating her restless spirit, even if she wasn't willing to admit it. As the tension between them danced like a flame about to go out, Lisa Hartley, the discreet intern, began to watch from afar. Aware that her investigations were a matter of life and death, she had decided that closer surveillance of Mike was essential. There was something about his way of lying and his inner strength that intrigued her, an unsolved mystery that could become the key piece in the mission she was determined to complete. As she watched their interaction, Lisa took note of every detail, skeptical about Mike's true intentions. He seemed to be playing a very risky game, but his cunning was undeniable, and that was what made her reaffirm her vigilance. Inside him, an internal struggle was going on. Mike was caught between acting just to protect his skin and the growing desire to take Rick down, a feeling that was slowly beginning to take shape in his heart. He wondered if, perhaps, it was time to do something more than just survive. The first step had been taken, but the road ahead was littered with traps, each move requiring meticulous attention and cunning resources. Mike reflected on these possibilities while hovering in the shadows of the office, showing that the battle against corruption began not outside, but within him. Each button pressed on his keyboard echoed like a drum in his chest, with the weight of his strengths and weaknesses fighting for a greater purpose. As the days progressed at TitanTech, Mike Reynolds felt the atmosphere thicken with an unspoken tension. Each time he passed Rick Carter's office, he felt the financial director's piercing gaze, as if he were dissecting Mike's every move. The carefully orchestrated dance of deception was becoming more intricate, and Mike knew that his small acts of sabotage were beginning to stir suspicion. Rick had a knack for sensing threats beneath the surface, and it was evident that he was onto something. His voice, low and pragmatic, echoed through the sterile corridors as he demanded accountability from his team, insisting that they root out the source of the discrepancies in the financial reports. "Someone is making a fool of us, and I want answers," he asserted, sending a chill down the spines of those around him. It was a delicate game Mike was playing, one that required precision and stealth. He understood that Rick was not a man to be trifled with. Meanwhile, Kate Dawson found herself caught in a whirlwind of frustration and determination. She had been tirelessly combing through financial records, her mind racing with possibilities, yet every turn led her to the same dead end. Her colleagues were too disheartened to lend their voices to her cause, fearing Rick's retribution. It was a battle of integrity versus survival, and Kate embodied those ideals. She resolved to dig deeper, firmly believing that the truth would set them free, even when the walls around her felt like they were closing in. As she stared at the glowing screen in her tiny office, she felt a mix of admiration and suspicion toward Mike, a man whose enigmatic charm hinted at depths she hadn't yet uncovered. With grim determination, Mike knew that to truly take down Rick, he needed to escalate his plan. The stakes were no longer just punitive, but existential. He felt a thrill coursing through him as he accessed the company's internal systems one evening, the glow of his computer illuminating his focused expression. The thrill of the hunt and the rush of adrenaline mingled in his veins as he navigated through layers of firewalls, dodging digital alarms that could expose him at any moment. His cunning paid off when he uncovered a trove of documents buried beneath layers of corporate jargon, proof that the financial manipulations originated from the upper echelons of TitanTech, implicating Rick in a dangerous web of deceit that could bring the entire operation down. Mike's heart raced as he skimmed through the incriminating evidence. It was risky, and the consequences of discovery weighed heavily on him, blending fear with a sense of purpose he hadn't felt for a long time. The interplay of chaos and order moved in rhythm within the illuminated cubicles of TitanTech, shadows lurking among the harmless buzz of office chatter. A soft knock at his door pulled Mike from his focus, and he looked up to find Lisa Hartley standing with her arms crossed, her keen eyes measuring his. "You're playing a dangerous game, Mike," she said, her tone a mix of warning and intrigue. He nodded slowly, feeling the weight of the revelation in the pit of his stomach. "And you're right in the thick of it," he replied thoughtfully, recognizing the potential in their unpredictable alliance. It was a game of chess, and he was realizing that with each interaction, every calculated move could either lead him closer to freedom or lock him deeper in a trap set by Rick's manipulations. With every moment passing, the stakes rose higher, and Mike realized he would need every ounce of wit and courage he had if he were to outsmart the predator that was Rick Carter and emerge victorious in this corporate war. The weeks at TitanTech passed in a blur for Mike, who now found himself embroiled in a profound and unexpected moral dilemma. While trying to destabilize Rick Carter's schemes, a series of his thoughtless actions resulted in the firing of a group of ordinary workers, people who had nothing to do with the corruption he was trying to bring down. The weight on his conscience began to build, a pressure that made him feel like he was sinking into quicksand. Like an accountant who always found a way to manipulate numbers and situations to his advantage, he now realized that he was dealing with real lives and their respective families. Satirizing his own situation, he was reminded of the old maxim that nothing is personal, just business, but it was difficult to ignore the humanity that was now intertwined in his actions. The tension within him was growing, an internal battle between the desire to escape and the natural call to justice. On a particularly tense day, Lisa approached him, her incisive gaze cutting through the heavy atmosphere of the office. With the confidence of someone who knew more than he was letting on, he added that he was definitely not an ordinary guy and that he could make a difference if he really wanted to take Rick down. Mike hesitantly confirmed nothing and looked away, but the seed of possibility had been planted. He pondered his options, wondering if it was better to follow his initial plan and disappear with a considerable amount or join forces with Lisa and Kate to face the monster that was becoming increasingly threatening. Meanwhile, Kate, oblivious to Lisa's true identity, was on her own journey of discovery. With the fervor and determination that always characterized her, she had found files that revealed the dark connections between Rick and fraudulent suppliers. Realizing she needed help, her mind quickly turned to Mike, who, although she saw him as a smooth manipulator, seemed to have the potential to make a difference. In a clear reflection of the growing tension in the environment around them, the pieces began to move on the board. As Mike's plans intertwined with Kate's and Lisa's enigmatic presence grew more and more around him, he felt more lost than ever. He needed to decide which side he was on, if there was still a side beyond his own interests. Lonely mornings turned into harrowing nights of reflection, and, for the first time in his life, he questioned his personal ambition. He looked out the office window, watching the city pulse outside as the fireworks of his heart echoed his conflict. The struggle for morality, the need to choose between the convenience of flight or the risk of struggle, became his new reality, and his destiny seemed as fragile as the values he began to idolize. Mike felt a surge of adrenaline as he gathered the fragmented pieces of a puzzle he had unwittingly stumbled into, knowing that the stakes had suddenly risen dramatically. With every instinct telling him to press forward, he meticulously crafted his plan to expose Rick Carter, the enigmatic and menacing CFO whose influence shadowed TitanTech. For Mike, this wasn't merely an act of revenge, it was a transformative moment that compelled him to consider a moral stand amid corporate malevolence. The air in his cramped office was heavy with anticipation, the artificial light flickering above like the doubt creeping into his mind, but he squashed it down, focusing instead on the forged documents now sprawled across his desk, each one carefully engineered to look incriminating enough to teach Rick yet reveal the hidden loyalties among the employees. This was a test, a gamble that would put everything on the line, and Mike felt the familiar thrill of deceit course through his veins as he imagined the chaos that might ensue when these documents got out. As he shrewdly maneuvered through the corporate corridors, Mike couldn't shake the feeling that he was not in this alone anymore. Though still wary of her true intentions, Kate had become a surprising ally, her steadfast determination igniting a fire within him that he hadn't realized was burning low. They shared glances that spoke volumes, understanding threaded between them in a way that was almost electric. Lisa, however, remained the wild card, her quiet demeanor holding a powerful secret that, like a carefully spun web, connected them all. When their carefully laid plans unraveled and the documents leaked to the intended target Rick, it became clear Mike had uncovered a more profound betrayal, one that sent tremors through the ranks of TitanTech. The office echoed with hushed whispers, suspicion curling like smoke as employees shifted their allegiances, revealing both unexpected allies and deceitful informants under Rick's flickering grasp. And then came the moment Lisa decided to step into the light, her voice steady as she finally revealed her true identity as an undercover investigator. The room, once filled with a palpable tension as they peered into the abyss of uncertainty, suddenly felt charged with purpose as she explained her mission to gather irrefutable evidence against Rick. He felt both relief and terror. Together they formed a precarious triangle, balancing trust and skepticism, but Mike's mind raced with possibilities as he kneeled to the precipice of a shared cause. The stakes had never felt higher. The trio bonded in their shared vision of justice, felt as if it could be severed at any moment by the dark influence of Rick, who was now aware of potential moles within his operation. They realized they had little time to act before he would attempt to escape the web they were weaving to teach him, leaving behind a trail of devastation. Mike's sharp mind conjured memories of how he had manipulated situations to get what he wanted, and now he pivoted those tactics against Rick. He said that they would need to use their own game against him, swindling the swindler with cunning intent. He sketched out plans with fervor, his heart racing as he envisioned Rick's imminent flight on his private jet. They would have to coordinate, creating a distraction that would draw Rick's attention away from his planned escape. While Kate organized the execution with meticulous detail, Lisa ensured they were covered from every angle, her calm demeanor contributing to a sense of control in the brewing chaos. Mike felt the air grow thick with the heady mix of hope and danger, their collective endeavor morphing into a high-stakes game of wits, powered by the desire to reclaim the integrity of TitanTech. With each passing moment, Mike became acutely aware of how deeply the transformation within him had taken root. The once self-serving accountant had become an unlikely hero, emboldened by the collective spirit of his newfound allies. The weight of his decisions was not lost on him as the deadline loomed closer, but he found clarity in the exhilaration of their plan. This was not just about money anymore, it was about fighting for the downtrodden, those who had suffered under Rick's yoke, and for once, he would be on the right side of this battle. The revelation of purpose pulsed within him like a heartbeat, as he whispered to himself that he would do whatever it took to ensure Rick would not slip through their fingers. The taste of danger was metallic on his tongue, but it was a taste he found himself addicted to as the game began in earnest, Mike feeling for the first time the intoxicating rush of defending the innocent against corruption. As the tension in TitanTech escalated, Mike Reynolds felt adrenaline coursing through his veins as he meticulously crafted his plan for revenge against Rick Carter. Understanding the depths of Rick's deceitful operations and recognizing that now was the perfect moment for a far-reaching trap, he set up a false transaction that would appear as a golden opportunity for Rick to launder a considerable sum of money. Wealthy illustrations of tax reports danced in his mind, each number carefully manipulated, a petty smile creeping onto his face. He held on to the conviction that the walls would soon close in on the man who had evaded justice for too long. At the same time, Mike skillfully adjusted the accounting ledgers, ensuring that the figures would suggest, with clarity, that Rick was embezzling funds straight from the shareholders' accounts. He could already envision the chaos that would unfold. As the pieces fell into place, Lisa Hartley's role became crucial in this elaborate charade. Gaining authorization from her superiors to monitor all financial movements within TitanTech, she sank into the world of the company's malfeasance. With her sharp, analytical mind and keen observations, she unraveled layers of data that Mike had carefully constructed, noting each anomaly that led back to Rick. The thrill of impending justice lit a fire within her, each keystroke reinforcing her commitment to unveiling the truth. Meanwhile, Kate Dawson, fueled by a mix of indignation at the corruption and a burgeoning alliance with Mike, adeptly maneuvered through the office, employing her charm to distract the oblivious executives. She breezed into the boardroom with a confident smile, her heart racing as she engaged Rick in casual banter, completely concealing the storm brewing beneath the surface. Unbeknownst to Rick, who maintained his usual composure while overseeing integral business deals, a master plan was being executed right under his nose. His arrogance overshadowed his instincts, leading him to believe that nobody could pose a threat to him. Mike observed from a distance, his heart pounding with each passing second. It was the most intricate dance he had ever orchestrated. As the clock ticked down, he breathed deeply, readying himself to push the button that would seal Rick's fate. As the clock struck noon, in the heart of the TitanTech office where the sunlight broke through the glass panels, illuminating a battlefield of ambition and greed, Lisa declared, with all the authority of her position, that they had received potential evidence of financial misconduct. The atmosphere twisted, tension crackling. Suddenly, the room turned electric when Rick, unsuspecting and unmoved, confidently signed the incriminating documentation, his signature a ceremonial mark sealing not just his fate but those of many unsuspecting employees who had been victims of his relentless ambition. In that moment, Mike's initial excitement morphed into a bittersweet realization. He was on the brink of destroying a man, and the repercussions would ripple throughout the company. As the documents were sent to the authorities, time seemed to slow for everyone involved. It became a palpable silence, the calm before the storm. Questions hung in the air, and each character stood poised at the precipice of chaos. Just as Rick leaned back in his grand office chair, looking pleased with himself, the doors burst open and an array of federal agents stormed in. They aimed their cameras, capturing the look of shock and betrayal that washed over Rick's face. In that moment, triumph emerged through Mike, as a mixture of vindication and dread filled his chest. Amidst the chaos, he could see Kate watching, her eyes wide with a mix of awe and fear. Lisa, maintaining a stoic facade, felt an overwhelming sense of accomplishment, her mission nearing completion. Yet beneath the surface of victory, fleeting doubts flickered regarding the price of their triumph. They had the proof, but would the victory truly bring justice, or merely entangle them further in the web they had woven? With Rick Carter finally feeling the weight of the trap he had set for himself, the aftermath promised to be just as tumultuous as the carefully laid plans that had led them here. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting an orange glow through the sleek glass windows of TitanTech, Mike Reynolds felt the weight of the world crashing down on him. It was a moment of reckoning. After outsmarting the corporate matrix for so long, everything began to unravel, and this time, he lacked an escape plan. Rick Carter, the cold and ruthless CFO whom Mike had underestimated, had outmaneuvered him in a dangerous game of chess that had spiraled into chaos. In the excitement of recent stakes, Mike had thought himself clever enough to play both sides, but now he felt confused and cornered as he paced his cluttered office, tension spiking with every frantic thought. He had no idea how Rick had turned the tables so swiftly, turning the entire corporate investigation against him in a masterstroke of cunning theft of their trust. Mike's heart raced as the sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder, piercing through the frosty air like a blade. One authoritative knock followed another, echoing ominously along the pristine hallways of the company, and he felt a chill crawling up his back, tightening his throat. Just then, Lisa Hartley burst into the room, her expression a mixture of urgency and calm resolve, something akin to a fierce protector. She had been a shadow in his day-to-day life, but now, standing before him, she radiated a determination that ignited a spark of hope he didn't think he had left. She said that they had to move quickly if they wanted to prevent Rick's escape, which was reinforced by the anxious glances they exchanged, revealing that they were both acutely aware that time was running out. Outside, chaos erupted as police officers bustled through the office, handcuffing several executives, their hands expertly maneuvering through each cuff with a confidence that mirrored authority. They were claiming to dismantle a scheme that Mike had initially thought he was a part of, now his name plastered at the center of their investigation. Mike's pulse quickened further at the concept of being implicated in a web of greed he had only intended to observe from far. Just then, as if on cue, a flash of realization hit him when he recalled the conversations he had overheard earlier, Rick's twisted laughter reverberating in his mind, the way he brushed off suspicion, and the casual comments about tangible possibilities hinted better than a contract. Lisa's voice sliced through his thoughts as she pointed out the connection Rick had built with the detectives on the case, highlighting his power over the system and highlighting how he had already prepared everything for his own exoneration. The chilling knowledge almost paralyzed him. Rick was the real architect of the scheme, one who could see it all fall apart in an instant, leaving Mike holding the pieces of baseless charges. With every moment wasted, Rick was a step closer to fleeing the country, and every decision left to chance felt like rolling the dice with a loaded outcome. In a frantic bid, they hurried to strategize a plan, crafting urgency out of despair. She insisted that Mike's most potent weapon was his knowledge if only they could find enough evidence to clear his name and fully expose Rick's underhanded dealings. He felt a rush of determination surging through him as Lisa methodically laid out the necessities. They needed access to Rick's office, to the secured files that contained the real dirt strong enough to turn the tide. As they stealthily navigated through the dim corridors, every shadow seemed to breathe a warning, reflecting their uncertainty, yet igniting their shared courage. Mike whispered ideas to Lisa, bursts of encouragement peppering her resolve, while they both hardened a mental tug of war against the risks that loomed ahead. The thought that they might return with nothing paralyzed him, but the fire in Lisa's eyes would not allow him to relent. She was not just a bystander but a fearless ally willing to fight against the odds. Their mission became not just about saving Mike but about bringing down a titan of treachery. Once they reached Rick's office door, now lined with the scent of crisp paper and cold metal, Mike felt an electric charge course within him. The faint scent of stale coffee hung in the air as he twisted the knob, heart pounding, and there they were standing inside, where Rick had held dominion all along. They needed to outsmart him at his own game. Just as they began their search, the realization that Rick was operating in more than just shadows took hold, amplifying their urgency as they emerged forward, knowing that their own time was severed, a race against more than just a ticking clock but against a man whose power was insidious and cunning. TitanTech lights illuminated the office as a reflection of the anticipation that filled the air. Mike finally had the courage to pull the last letter out of his sleeve, and his determination was centered on the secret recordings that captured Rick admitting to the embezzlement of millions. Resolving to once again fight for something bigger than himself, he reported to the police station, where the tension was palpable, as if every heartbeat could reverberate throughout the room. He handed the evidence to the police, his nervous gaze following the officer's every move, wondering if he would finally be able to free himself from the weight of his past. Adrenaline pulsed through his veins, and he felt a mix of fear and hope as the police prepared to act. Now is the time, he said to himself, remembering everything he had sacrificed up until that moment. Meanwhile, in the background, the airport lounge scene unfolded at an insane speed. Rick, in turn, was about to board an international flight, an arrogant smile on his face, capable of making a criminal look innocent. He carried in his heart what he thought was a victory, but destiny had other stories to tell. Sirens echoed as officers surrounded the scene, and Mike watched from afar, a whirlwind of emotions forming a lump in his throat. He heard the boom of the police officers' voices, who firmly announced Rick's arrest. "You can't do that!" Rick screamed, his face contorting in disbelief as he realized his web of lies was disintegrating before his eyes. With Rick out of the game, it was as if an immense weight had been lifted, but a new reality was imposing itself on TitanTech. The company began to collapse financially, and the once confident shareholders were now gathered in a frenzy, trying to discuss how to restructure a company in ruins. Kate, watching everything from her new office, felt accomplished and, at the same time, sad to see how much ambition and corruption had harmed the people around her. At least now, things can change, she thought, promising herself that she would stand firm to stop history from repeating itself, not just for her, but for everyone who still needs justice. However, there was also a new title on his desk, a promotion that came as a result of his integrity amidst the chaos. She found herself dreaming of reformulating TitanTech with ethical values, which she defended so much. Lisa, in turn, like an undercover investigator who had finally lined up all the pieces of the puzzle, prepared to bring the investigation to a successful conclusion. Her heart was touched by the fight she and her allies had fought to expose the truth, and at the same time, there was a feeling of disgust that arose when thinking about how all this corruption could have been avoided. The good always triumphs, she muttered to herself as she prepared her final report. However, even she realized that there were still other battles to win and that the shadow of Mike's past could still loom like a specter over them. And then there was Mike, who, while he was relieved to see his nemesis arrested, was also dealing with his own demons. What he did was not exalted, and he knew it. His dark past still surrounded him, and the question that tormented him was whether he could truly change. Walking through the cold streets of the city, he reflected on everything that had happened, feeling the cool breeze and stroking his face as a reminder of his new reality. His mind turned to Kate and Lisa, the two women who had become important in his life and who were somehow shaking his dormant morality. He realized that to be a hero now, he would need to face his past actions and seek forgiveness, not just from himself, but from everyone he had harmed. The challenge before him was colossal, but the journey he had taken had brought him there and left him with a new perspective on what it truly means to fight for something bigger than oneself. The TitanTech lights were about to go out, but Mike Reynolds' fight was just beginning. With Rick Carter unmasked and corruption exposed, the company found itself in turmoil, with employees applauding Mike and Kate's courage. However, the price of revelation was high and the consequences were marked in their souls. Mike, now a man without possibilities in large corporations, felt for the first time the weight of his actions, but also an unexpected freedom. Kate, by his side, saw something she didn't expect, a future where people like them could unite against what is wrong. In a moment of vulnerability, he didn't hesitate to suggest that Mike use his vast knowledge of fraud to help others shape a more transparent corporate world, carrying out a true crusade. So, as the two walked away from the chaos of TitanTech, an anonymous envelope appeared on their desk, hidden amid the wreckage of ancient corruption. Mike opened it slowly, his eyes shining with the growing adrenaline of discovering the invitation to a new project. To his surprise, he smiled at the camera, a smile that promised new adventures ahead, challenging what he had seen and embracing what he could become. He was no longer running away from himself, on the contrary, he was transforming into a true protagonist, determined to continue the fight. And in an illuminated city, uncertainty hung in the air, as if the story was just beginning. A new journey was about to unfold, full of moral dilemmas, intrigue and, who knows, even an unexpected romance on the horizon. The future was there, pulsing and vibrant, waiting for the challengers of justice to blaze its trail. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like and subscribe to Happiness of Love. That way, you won't miss any of our heartfelt romances. See you in the next love story.